Helping Seniors Television, all about improving quality of life for seniors. If you're a senior, know a senior, or plan to be a senior, then this show is for you. It's all about helping you develop your own aging plan so you can age actively and with dignity. Helping Seniors Television from the Helping Seniors Network of information, education, and resources.
We're going to go through the 7 basic building blocks of the aging plan. So to try to make this seem a little gentler and a little less intimidating, we decided to add a euphemism, which we call getting your ducks in a row. Because, you know, if people say, okay, aging plan sounds like there's a lot of homework, there's a lot of study, maybe there's a final exam or things like that. But we just want to say this is really about helping you get your ducks in a row. Because I can tell you, last year we took 5,450 calls from seniors and their families. And there is a common thread that happens in these. When somebody calls us and there's a lot of time involved, we can do a lot better job of helping people. Why? Because when there's time involved, you have more options. Usually it costs less, and there's less stress. The calls that we don't like to get, but we will try to help anyone who calls us, is like a call that Karen took yesterday. Somebody has a court date in 4 days, has problems, their attorney quit on them, all kinds of things like that, and trying to figure out solutions at the last minute when the clock is ticking. And you know, when there's kind of like an emergency, there's 3 things that happen all at the same time. First of all, we get under stress because now we have to make a decision. We can't put it off. So let's be honest, when we're under stress, we aren't making the best decisions, right? We're just trying to come up with something that floats us the next minute or two. The second problem is when you're under that kind of duress, you don't have as many options. If you could plan stuff way in advance, you can think, well, I might want to do this, I might want to do that, or I could do this thing over here. But the reality is if you're under pressure, you maybe only have 1 option or 2 options, and now you have to make the best, what do they call it, the least of the evils. Then the third thing that happens is usually because you have limited options, everything gets very, very expensive on you. So the options that remain are probably not the cheapest options, right? So that's what we really talk about. We want to help you get your ducks in a row. And so kind of with that, this is kind of like the theme that we've been talking about. And you'll notice a couple of our themes are all kind of barnyard related, because the biggest problem that we have as an organization trying to do what Joe has asked us to do is getting people to take this stuff seriously, because we all, you know, if we're going to the fair or doing something fun, we're all up for planning for that. If we're planning for something that seems a little bit more, I don't know, daunting or tedious, we tend to put that stuff off. Procrastination is not our friend. And so one of the things that we found out when we're talking about getting your ducks in a row was this. The first corollary is be wise like an owl. Don't try this on your own. And let me just explain real quick what I mean. We live in a great world that you can almost go online and search out anything you want to search out on. I don't know about you, but many times if I go search something online, particularly if it's a really technical matter, I can wind up sometimes more confused than I started with. I don't know if this has ever happened to you. If you ever looked up a legal question or a medical question, what happens is, first of all, it will show you everything since the dawn of time. So the law might have been something in 2017 before COVID, and the law could be totally different in 2024. So when you're looking up that legal question, one of the questions is this still the right thing for the right date? The next thing that happens is people are also seeing this by state. So when you put in that Google search with that legal question, they're going to come up with California law, Washington state law, but it's probably not going to be the same as Florida law. You follow what I'm saying? And that's why we say, don't try this on your own. We are so blessed to live in a community that is 25% over the age of 65, and half of us are over the age of 50, which AARP calls you a senior at that point. But because of that, there are so many great resources in our community. So if you look around this room, you will see many of these guys who are volunteering their time to bring and just share information with you today. Here's the thing. There are so many good people, and I will say this too. A lot of times people will see an ad on TV, and there'll be like this 800 number, and they'll tell you about Medicare. They'll tell you about reverse mortgages. They'll tell you about You can do your will at home. It's easy. Just click a few buttons and you'll be all set, right? There'll be all these things that come, and some nationwide actor that you used to love on TV is telling you how easy this stuff is. The problem is when you dial that 800 number, you're talking to a call center in Kansas or something. Who knows? So really want to recommend that you talk to people who are local. Seniors Helping Seniors, Reflections Local, VJOS local, Advocates for Aging local, Practitioners in Motion local. All these people are local to Brevard. They're your neighbors. You can look them in the eye and say, here's what I need help with, and figure it out. And then you're getting somebody who really knows, A, what they're doing, but B, who's invested in our community. When Joe started this, he was 100%, this has to be local. It's like they have the same problems in Indian River County that we have with seniors. They have the same problems in Volusia that we have with seniors. But the resources in each county are local. You have to figure out who's the right elder law attorney that can help you, like Amy Van Fossen. You have to figure out who the right resource is for you. So even when Joe created this was his whole point about having a senior resource center. He wanted businesses, yes, they're businesses, yes, they have to pay their Florida power bill, but he wanted businesses who care about seniors, and they do this more as a passion, not just a business. And so he wanted to get groups together that would see the same thing that he saw, which is that we need to work together. You've heard the expression, takes a village for kids, right? Takes a village to help us with seniors, because there's so many things we run into. So the third little part of our get your ducks in a row, don't try this on your own, is don't be an ostrich, because many of the things that we're going to talk about in your aging plan are so important. Ostriches are known for sticking their heads in the sand and just like, oh, it'll go away. I'll deal with it later. I can tell you from everybody that I've ever talked to, I'm not an expert like these guys around here in the room are, but I can tell you from everybody I've talked to that's an expert, these things don't get better with time. In fact, a lot of times, here again, we're back to that, your options get closed off. You're going to be left with less good choices. You're going to be looking at things that are going to cost more. So this is why we really want to do that. So hopefully I've drummed in the point that we want to make an aging plan, want to get our ducks in a row. So we're going to cover today fairly quickly the big 7. We're going to try to come back and do a whole Knowledge College session for each one of these, because each one of these we could talk for days, if not, weeks on each one of these, because there's so much to delve into. So we kind of go building. There's 7 chapters. The building block number 1 that I want us to think about first is wellness, health and wellness. Because if you think about it, you could have all the money in the world, you could have all the time in the world, but if you don't have your health, everything is going to be kind of shut in on you. And so that's why we devoted the next hour, starting at 11, we begin with our wellness series, where our goal is each 4th Thursday of the month, we're going to hold the Knowledge College at 10. We hold the wellness series at 11. And the whole concept behind the wellness series is we want to get you equipped on the Knowledge College elements you need to know, but we also want to get you just some thoughts about what's going to help you with wellness. So along the way, like this year, Tammy Lieberg with Practitioners in Motion did a great job. Early this year, we had Heart Smart Month. She gave a whole talk about checking your blood pressure, how to understand the different things like that. Along the way, we've had some great conversations about things that are going to help you just be well, what you need to be aware of as we get older. We had Dr. Cressida Cornish come in and talk about polypharmacy, about making sure you're safe with your medicines, because the problem is if you go to this clinic over here and then you go to a specialist over here and you don't pick up your drugs prescriptions all at the same store, you could run into a situation where you're having one thing that's fighting another thing and all of that. And it's amazing when she gave that talk. It's amazing how often that happens. Today at 11, we're going to have we call it Skin Care and Summer Sun. So we're going to have some folks with Mobile Derm Labs come here. So these are folks that actually go to people's where they are and help them stay safe, everything like checking what is that spot? Do I need to be concerned about that? So everything that we're going to talk about is wellness and health. the idea behind wellness is to keep you from having to be in a hospital situation or have those treatments. So everything we can do that helps you stay at the tip top, that's the best thing. Made this comment. We were doing a radio show yesterday, and we were talking about this very comment that it used to be odd when people lived to 100. In fact, it was so odd that they would stop down on the national, I can't remember if it was NBC, but one of them had Willard Scott, and he would stop down, and the Schmucker's Jam or whatever it was would honor whoever was turning 100 that day. And it was like usually one person, on a banner day, it'd be two people. Well, now you can talk to any of the folks in this room, and they will tell you that it's quite common that they're talking with people who are late 90s, early 100s. Jennifer, they had a great talk here with a lady. She was 100, right? And she was celebrating 101 now. And when she walked in here and gave this talk, never would have guessed. If you hadn't told me she was 101, never would have guessed. So the point is, we have more seniors. Number one, more people are turning 65 than ever have before because the boomers are all there now. Number two, people are just flat out living longer. So what used to be old might be 80. Now it's probably 100. I don't know. And then the third thing is we're in Florida, so everybody keeps moving to Florida. We were talking about this yesterday. We had a gentleman named Mark Gallegos who is a real estate guy, and he was telling us we're now over 23 million people in Florida. Unbelievable. So people keep moving to Florida, but wellness is block number one of your aging plan. So let's go on to chapter number 2. This is important, and I would ask Diana from Amy B. Van Fossen's office, you can wave because this is all about your neck of the woods. So I am sure that Diana can tell you stories. Amy Van Fossen has been an elder law attorney in our community for like 20 plus years, right? And I love one of the lines that she taught me early on. She goes, Kerry, she said, people come into her office and they have these complex legal situations. She goes, for them, this is usually like the first time, maybe second time in their life that they're having to confront some of this stuff. She goes, Kerry, we got 20, 30, 40 of these going on every week, and we've been doing this for 20 years. There's not much somebody can bring to us that we haven't had to find a way to work through before. Experience does matter. I really think it does. And so in the legal plan, there's more, but there's basically 5 big elements that every time I've sat down with Amy or one of the excellent attorneys in her office, we've talked about. You know, it's everything from having your paperwork. So if you have to go to the hospital, there's not confusion about what your wishes are and what they need to know at the hospital, who can speak for you, who can't speak for you, all kinds of things like that. There's also things that are so important. Everybody thinks, well, my last will and testament so I can leave my flower collection to so-and-so or whatever. But there are things that can happen even on the road before you get there. So everything from how many times do you guys get called because somebody's called in, somebody's had a stroke, now the family can't pay bills or do things that they need to do while mom is desperately trying to get better. So there's things like powers of attorney and things like that. And I have talked to Amy and Tyler and Katie and some of the great attorneys they have over there. They all tell the same thing. They say people will come in, they try to maybe go down to an office supply store, get a piece of paper, work something out on their own, or maybe it was a nice lady at church who meant well but doesn't have the experience, or maybe somebody saw one of those ads on TV. I just click a few buttons on my computer and it'll spit out the paperwork that I need. But the problem with that is they see the aftermath, because the problem with these documents is the moment that they must work, there's no chance for them to be done over. The moment they must work, they don't work. And you don't know it until that moment. And then they have to go to Amy's office and go, please help us. And once again, then it becomes not because Amy charges, but it's just because the work is so much more intense. The court systems require things called guardianship that could have been avoided with a fairly simple piece of paper ahead of time. And so everything gets locked down and gets super expensive because now you didn't take advantage of the window you had ahead of time. So as I've heard Amy say, something that might have cost, in the hundreds can cost tens of thousands simply because the right paperwork wasn't there. Or worse yet, maybe somebody moved in from out of state. They thought they had paperwork done correctly up there, wherever they came from. but you still have to make sure it works in Florida. Or a lot of times people have had stuff that was done 20 years ago, and maybe the people that they wanted to represent them are no longer in their lives. Something happened, something changed, and there's all these things going on. To sit down with an elder law attorney and say, do I have my ducks in a row here, is probably like, besides your health, is probably like the number one thing that you should be doing. So on chapter 3 of your aging plan, we're talking about finances. And whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you're someplace in between, you have to have a plan for your life. And I remember hearing this thought that 60 is the new 40, 80 is the new 60. I'm sure 100 now is the new 80. So one of the challenges that we have to think through is, could we possibly outlive our money? I can tell you, Karen can tell you really how many calls she gets from people who are in absolute desperate straits because wherever they were renting, the ownership changed, whatever was going on, they now have to pay $400 more a month for the same place that they've been living for all these years. So the story is usually about the same. I'm on a fixed income. I get this much money per month. This is what my Social Security check is. $400 more a month might as well be $2 million a month because I can't do it. So affordable housing, all these challenges that come face to face with us. I know we talk a lot about when it comes to skilled nursing facilities and things like that. Those can run $12,000 a month in our county. So you have to have some awareness. And I can also tell you the number of calls we get from people say, well, Medicare covers that, don't they? Vicki, it doesn't cover that, does it? Vicki is a great Medicare expert because she's not beholden to a company. She works with all of them, and she loves to sit down with people and say, let's look at your program and figure out what is best for your situation, the doctors you see, the prescriptions you take. But back to this point about assisted livings, the problem is you have to have a plan that's going to get you there, because so often we'll get those calls. Like I said, somebody called, they got to move now because they can't afford the rent. Where can I find low-income housing? Doesn't exist, folks. There's a waiting list. How many years is the waiting list? So like the first thing when somebody calls us, they say, march right down, get on the waiting list, okay? Because you need to at least be on the list. So eventually maybe something will open up. There'll be a miracle. I don't know, but you're going to have to get on the waiting list first. Here's my point. You got to have a financial plan. You've got to look realistically at what you've got to work with and then try to figure out, is that going to work through my average life expectancy? There was a statistic. I really need to update this because I've been quoting this for years, and I'll bet it's longer now. But a while back, if you had your 65th birthday, your average life expectancy was going to be another 18 years. So I'm sure it's gone up. So you got to look at the window. Like financial planners, they like to put stuff in little calculators, and they'll say, well, here's what you need, here's what you've got, and this is how many years your money will last. These are important things to know. There's also questions like, even if you're newly retired, like you're just coming up on 65, you have decisions to make about getting set up with Medicare. You also have decisions as early as 62 about, am I going to take my Social Security benefits? Is it going to benefit me to wait until full retirement age or even later? What's the best strategy? These are all the questions that we should be asking about. It's interesting because when we're kids, right, they ask us, what do you want to be when you grow up? What's your life going to look like? Are you going to go to college? What kind of job? How are you going to live your life? Are you going to have kids? They're always asking us questions like that. Then when you get like into your middle age, then they start saying, well, what's your retirement plan? What you going to do? And a friend of ours, he has this line. He said he quotes this article in U.S. News, and he said they had done a survey of people, said, what do you want in retirement? And so like number 3 is like which golf course I'm going to play on, and stuff like that. He said it was only till you got down to like number 18 that long-term care considerations creep in, because it's not stuff we want to think about, but it is stuff we may have to think about. So being prepared is the best, is kind of like the best defense. So when we get to financial plan, we're going to cover all those kind of things. Does that make sense how I'm explaining that? All right. The next area we call this staying home safely. Most of us love our homes. We think it's the right place. We want to age in place. The question is, can we find good help to do that? Can we find people like Seniors Helping Seniors who will give us a little bit of an extra hand? Do we maybe need more help? A little bit, is there now a case where we have to bring in help that could help us with showering or things like that? There's all those questions, but there's also questions about staying safe at home. Like, how do we do that? Are there trip hazards in your home? Is there security things? How do we stay safe from scams? Things like that. So we say, if your goal is to age at home, what are the things that we should do that make us successful at that? If you've talked to anybody who's in the medical profession, they will tell you as we get older, falls are one of the most tragic kind of things, because we really have to be careful that when you get somebody who's very old, very frail, when they have a fall, that can actually be the road to the end. So we want to do everything we can to stay safely at home if that's our option. So that we say that's chapter number 4, is staying safe at home. We're going to talk about senior living options, because a lot of people say, listen, the kids have grown up, they've moved on, so it's just me, or just me and my dog, or me and my spouse and my dog, or me and my cat, or whatever it is, and there's just us, and we don't need all the space we have. I can't manage the stairs anymore. If it's a 2-story, I'm willing to look at some other things. It could be anything from downsizing to what does independent living look like for seniors. Maybe it has to be like, I need more help. Maybe I need assisted living. Or maybe there's a cognition challenge and we have to talk about memory care. This is like Denise's world all day. She is helping seniors and their families try to navigate what might be the best thing if there's a way or if there's a better option than dealing with home. And there's a lot of ways to get there. Denise is a person you can sit down with who's locally and who will walk you through all of that. So that's a very important chapter. So again, to make the distinction, one is like, my goal is to stay at home. So that could be fine. You still need to know this chapter, because what if it becomes not safe for you to stay at home? What would you prefer to have happen at that time? What would be your plan? Again, this is all, each one of us has to think about this for ourselves. So the next chapter is really 2 chapters. We just kind of glom them together. We want you to have an organizational plan and a transportation plan. And they're kind of integrated. Like, if you're like me, you love driving your car. It's fun. You hope you can do this as long as you can. What if something got in the way of you being able to drive your own car? There's a lady who's part of the Joe Senior Resource Center. Her name is Jeetal Patel. She is Coastal Occupational Therapy. And in addition to the work that her and her therapist do, she also heads up a program called Drivability, where her goal is to keep seniors safely behind the wheel for as long as they can. So she literally is able to sit down, do driving assessments, and then it's possible, even people who've had strokes and things like that, they can do modifications in the car and things like that to make it safe for you to drive. But if it's not safe for you to drive, then we want you to put up your keys and find some other options. And there are, again, reasonable options here in our community, except you have to know ahead of time. Karen can tell you, she gets the calls, I got to be at the doctor at 10 a.m. I don't have a ride. And it's 1-800-UBER. I mean, there's not a lot of options when you come up against it at the last minute. Here again, there are some options, but there's typically waiting lists and a lot of advanced planning. So here again, the early bird gets the worm, another barnyard thing. But, you want to be ahead of these things. You want to be thinking about this before somebody says, Mom, Dad, or yanking your keys, So, and organizationally, this is kind of tied into this, because when you go through planning, what are we trying to accomplish? We have a couple of great people that I know. Christina Knowles with Making Space Now is like a professional organizer. It's easy for me to say. What she does is she'll help you go through a lifetime of accumulation of stuff and then decide what you really need to do and how to keep your house safe, efficient, effective. And there's a professional organizer. Her name is Maria Waddell. And she goes, I have 2 sets of sheets in my house, the ones that are on my bed and the ones that are in the washer. I won't allow clutter to build up. I don't know about you, but I'm guilty as charged. Like, we just have all this clutter and stuff we don't need. But more importantly, think about it past that. It's not just your stuff, it's your paperwork. So if you've ever had to make a trip to the ER and the ER people come in and start asking all these questions, they want to know stuff like, where's your list of prescriptions? They want to know what medications you're on. They want to know, like, who's your doctor? They have all this stuff they need to know, and they need to know it's stat. So the question is, how organized are we about that? More importantly, what if you can't? What if you're not the one that's in a position to tell them that? Will the people around you know that? So there's programs like the Vial of Life and things like that. There's all these tools that are designed to help you get information to people if you can't speak for yourself at that moment. So this is part of the organizational checklist concept too. Is that making sense? I'm explaining? All right. So chapter number 7, Medicare. Vicki, stand up and take a bow. So this is so important because in just a few months, your mailbox is going to start to get flooded with all these pieces of paper. You're going to see every person that did a sitcom in the 70s out on your TV screen telling you call 1-800, and they're going to tell you, if you just give us your zip code, we're going to give you the plan. Well, actually, I would say they're probably going to give you the business. But really, even though they mean well, here again, I go back to what I opened up with. If you start at the beginning chapter of this, you're still talking to somebody who may be caring and well-meaning. They're just not local. So you really do have to know what's right for you locally. So with somebody like Vicki, when you sit down with her, she can look at things. She's competent about things like donut hole, like what happens in the middle of the year when your prescription coverage runs out. And now all of a sudden you got to take the cost of your medicines on your own. So she can sit down with a calculator and figure out the medications you're on, and try to help you come up with a plan that navigates that for you correctly.
I'm Joe Steckler. Thank you for joining our program today. I'd like to remind you that our senior information line is available to you at 321-473-7770. There you can get help and direction that could be helpful for your specific situation or circumstances. The work of helping seniors is very important, but we can't do it alone. That is why our sponsors here in Brevard County are so important. I'd like to thank our many area sponsors, businesses, and medical providers who support the mission of helping seniors that help us carry the cost of our media efforts. If you'd like to join us either as a business partner or simply donate as an individual, we welcome your call at 321-473-7770. You are always welcome to visit our website at www.helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. Thanks so much for your help. It does make a difference.